Sure it's recording. Right, we're up and recording. Back here with the main man, Rob Herring, part 3. Right, next question we got. Did aftermarket companies such as the gear, helmet companies, etc., compromise a significant part of your income? What was your best deal over the years, and how did this revenue stream change over the years?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we got paid, obviously, when things were good, and you were healthy, you normally get a salary from your manufacturer, whether it be Honda or Yamaha. You get a basic wage. Then you get your bonuses, win bonuses, or top 3 bonuses, points money then from your sponsors, your clothing sponsors, or you might get, a couple of grand for goggles and a couple of grand for boots and, 3-4 grand for clothing. So yeah, it added up that way and you made your money up that way. But most of the sponsors then had clauses in, so that if you were out for, say, 2 months, they would take 25% off. If you're out for 4 months, they'd take 50% off. And if you're out for longer, you may not even get paid. And some companies, especially Italian ones, you may never see the last half of your money at all. I got screwed a couple of times by different sponsors over the years where they just flatly refused to, we're not paying you last bit because you didn't re-sign for them the following year. And there's nothing you can do about it. You try and chase it through an Italian court. I mean, DT's probably got stories about that too. Not all, you never got sometimes everything that you were anticipating getting. And also with racing is also quite tricky because, as I said to you earlier, I think, if you get injured, I had years where 95, I broke my leg twice in 95. So I hardly raced in 95 and I had nothing at the end of the year results wise to show for it. And, I wasn't in a commanding position, although in 96 I was open class British champion, but going into 96, I had no bargaining power. I think Colin Reid offered me, he said, I've got X amount of pounds for you. And then all of a sudden it was, well, actually, I've got to pay your mechanic now. So you haven't got any money. I need to pay your mechanic. So you will just get bonuses. And then all of a sudden you've got no salary. What am I going to live on? All the money that I had saved up, if I had any saved up beforehand, was having to see me through 96 because I didn't do anything in 95. And then I was getting bonuses, and that has a knock-on effect then over the next couple of years because you're playing catch-up. And people don't see that side of it. I find like the racing side can be quite bit of a smokescreen sometimes because it always looks great when you're in the paddock or the big trucks and stuff. And people think, there's this much money going around, the riders are doing really well, and quite often it's not the case. It's really, really shit at times. Especially when you've been injured. But as I say, there isn't a lot you can do because, what else do? You've got to go get a 9-to-5 job, and then you can't put the time and effort in with your training and your racing, and tricky. So it does have a knock on.
That's a poor thing as well because you obviously get injured in the first place riding for these guys, and then you're not getting paid because you're injured. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it, as I say, is bargaining power. If you have results, you have some bargaining power at the end of the year. You can say, okay, I was British champion, or I was second in the British, and next year, on the right bike, I can win it. When you've gone in, when you've got nothing, they know that you, on a good day, what you're capable of. But they're saying, well, you actually haven't done anything, and we can get so and so who was second last year, and we can pay. He'll come to us for X amount, and you want this much, and sorry, but we'll give you bikes and we'll help you go racing, but you're gonna have to just have bonuses, and that's tough, because most of us have either got rent or you've got a mortgage and you've still got to pay your bills, put food on the table, and that then is a lot of pressure. That's pressure before you've even got on the track, before you've even done your first British Championship or your first Grand Prix. You've got all that pressure to deal with, and that has a huge effect on you personally, and then no doubt probably on your results as well. If you're going racing and you haven't got any pressure, that makes a massive difference. Going with a clear mind, it makes a big difference.
A little weight off your shoulders. That's a really good insight. A lot of people wouldn't know this, especially fans, supporters. Like, you'd never get to know about part of the side.
Well, I think a lot of the time that a lot of the riders a lot of them have had and are probably having issues now, but a lot of people just don't talk about it because they just want to keep things to themselves, or when they do say something, people would not believe them. They think, oh no, that's bullshit. But I've been to meetings before and everything's looked real flush, and the mechanics haven't been paid for months, and you think, well, why are you still doing it? Because they do it because they love doing it. And the same with like the riders, they do it because that's what they want to do. They love doing it. And they do it sometimes for virtually nothing, and it's a real shame because, we all take racing wise, we all take a big risk whenever we turn a wheel on the track, and, to get hardly anything for it. And, is can be a bit demoralizing at times.
Yeah. It's mad details. Thanks for sharing that with us. Right, I've got some questions from myself now. Personally, some of my favourite times following you as a youngster racing Speedway Motocross and everything, I loved you on the Castrol Honda days. And I remember, obviously, you're my home track in Swindon at Fox Hill, and especially the 92 season, I think it was, for the GPs. And at Fox Hill, I remember you won the first race. I think you had a problem in the second. I don't know if it was a gear shift or something.
Sat McGeely were off, yeah.
I was gutted. I was like, I thought you had that totally in the bag. But during that season, I think that you were without doubt one of the fastest guys. When you had no problems at all, you was there. What do you think you could have done? What do you think were like challenging for the title that year? Like, as far as I was concerned, I thought you were the fastest guy without any issues, obviously.
I think in '92 I was in pretty good form. '92. To be truthful, it's one of those sort of years where you look back on, you think I didn't have any injuries, although I still had my wrist injuries, which I was carrying, but it didn't affect me that much in '92. I kind of had relatively sort of nice year as far as I wasn't really getting myself hurt at all. But I think to some degree that mental sort of attitude that I'd had, and maybe in one way believing in myself a little bit more, because on tracks that I liked, on tracks that I knew I could do really well on, I did well on. Fox Hills, Kalinchi, but tracks where I knew that I wasn't going to be quite as good at, the deeper sand tracks, I probably let myself get a little bit negative by the time I got there. So you almost knowing that you're beaten before you started. So I wish I had a little bit of a stronger attitude, thinking like, I'm going to go out there and ride 100%. What happens. But I kind of didn't, And I think also, in a way, knowing that my fitness wasn't quite as good as like Stefan, maybe Donny, in those tricky conditions, I did let it, although I was very good outwardly at not sort of listening to any hype or any bullshit. Inwardly, I'm not as fit as them. I'm not going to be able to get 100% to the end of the race. And I think you do end up beating yourself a little bit. You're already beat before you go to the line. If I could have changed that a little bit and just believed in myself a bit more, and been a tad fitter, I think, I probably could have been in a position where, I could have pushed for the championship that year. That was probably one of my best chances, 92.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. That was really cool.
I totally enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a great season. That was. I really enjoyed it. I still watch some of it all now.
I do as well. 92, and the bikes were good that year as well. Yeah. Even though we didn't have factory bikes that year, we had bits. The bike was really good, and I liked the Castrol, that sort of look, with the white and the green and red bikes. It looked really, it looked really, it looked really, really smart. It's gone to those days for me.
Great memories there. That was a real cool time.
Yeah.
Who do you love to watch race now?
I watch the GPs on TV. I like watching Jeffrey Hurlings because of what he can do that no one else is doing, what he can do on the track and the way he uses the track. That's what I'm interested in. He rides differently than anybody else, and that is what makes him different to anybody else. How he uses the track to cover the ground more effectively. Just little things. I watch the American stuff a lot, and I watched the Supercross this morning from yesterday. I love watching Dylan Ferrandis, just the way he rides in the Supercross, the passion that he's got and the speed. I like watching Tomac. I also like watching Kenny, Roxon as well, but he's just off the ball a little bit at the moment. But I love watching the American stuff for sure, and the outdoors. I watch the outdoors. I will probably watch the American stuff more than I do the European stuff. I don't watch the British. To me, I'm not. I'm not enthusiastic about anything to do with the British Championship. But I watch the GPs. Obviously I watch the results of the British lads, but yeah, it'd be nice if they're a bit further up the front. But yeah, I'll probably single people out. Like I said, I like watching Hurlings ride. Yeah. I don't kind of enjoy watching the guys further down because they're not that. Because I'm more interested in the technique side. That's what I like watching.
You're
how they're doing.
Analysing.
Analysing it. Yeah, I think that comes from a lot of like my teaching, my coaching that I was doing, because I analyse what they're doing, and that's what I like watching. But him especially because he does stuff that no one else is doing.
For sure, I agree with that. You sort of touched on this part of it a little bit, but I put, what were the main injuries that you feel probably cost you the chance to achieve even more? Obviously, you won a lot of British Championships, but I mean, like, especially in the GPs, and how restricting were they? I remember your knee, wrists.
My wrist, I broke my scaphoid, left scaphoid, January the 1st, 1988. I broke out testing in America. That should have been a really, really good year for me, 88. Although it sort of healed relatively well, I had it pinned halfway through the year in 88. It was fairly good again. I rode with that. I re-broke it again later on in my career and basically destroyed the scaphoid bone. Tried to carry on riding with a plaster cast, and that really I had to stop. So that was gradually deteriorating over the years. My left knee, which I did at the end of 88 in Australia, in a freak accident. I didn't even fall off. I think I finished second to Jeff Leask in a Supercross in Perth, and he turned off the track and rode down the side of the track to go back to the exit to come out. And I was behind him, and another rider, Australian lad, was on the track, got out of control, flew off the track, and as I was riding down, just nailed me. No. And that wrecked my left knee, and I didn't even make a mistake. So just one of those things, just the wrong place, wrong time.
Freak one,
yeah. And that because when I came home, I went to a knee surgeon who knocked me out and said, oh, they were going to put carbon fiber ligaments in, blah, blah, blah. When I woke up, they hadn't done anything. They said, oh, no, it's not that bad, but they just left it. I worked on getting my knee strong, but over the years, that gradually got worse. And I ended up having three snapped ligaments in my left knee. They're still snapped now, but riding with it. Then I started having problems with my cartilage. Hence, like the 1998 Motocross donations at Fox Hills, where I had to stop and put my cartilage back out, to flip the cartilage back out because my knee kept locking up. I had my knee lock up numerous times when I was racing. Got to the point sometimes where I couldn't actually ride with it. I had to stop and sort of loosen my knee brace and try and flick it back out again. So that caused me a lot of issue. Had to try and ride more with my feet on the pegs. Then you end up slowing down because, you can't charge into turn when your feet are on the pegs, So, I couldn't anyway. I needed to be sat down, my leg out. But sticking my left leg out then was all of a sudden in my mind going, hang on a minute. So you start slowing down. So that had a knock-on effect as far as my speed was concerned. And then obviously my neck, I think breaking my neck in 89 was probably the biggest sort of like eye-opener for me because I got Pekka Väkkönen going down a hill in a USGP, and in 89 at Unadilla came across me. I was going down the inside of him, and he was in front of me, and he came across and took my front wheel out and landed on my head and twisted my neck. And I got up and I had all pins and needles in my arm. So I came in, and my dad sort of said, "Oh, you look a bit grey, blah blah blah." I went out for the next race. I went out for the second moto. I did a lap, and I had to come in, and then flew back to the UK that night. Went to a chiropractor the following day who had me on a bed and was clicking my neck and doing all that kind of stuff, even though I was so tense because I think your body tenses up when there's an injury. He kept saying relax, and I'm like, I am trying to. Yeah. Anyway, I ended up racing the following weekend, British Championship at Torrington. I think I won the 125, won the 250 class, and I managed to, I think, do the first 125 moto, and then I couldn't ride the second one, and I had to lay down all the way back home in the van because I couldn't sit up. And my dad said, you need to get your neck looked at. So I went to a specialist, and they did x-rays, and they went, oh, your C5's broken. As soon as they said that, they went, right, neck collar, you need an operation. And I was like, shit. And as soon as they said that, I was like, he said to me, like, if you'd have fallen again, he said you could be paralyzed, And as soon as they said that to me was like, okay. Luckily, I had a couple of different opinions, and eventually the consensus was to leave it, wear a neck brace, 8 weeks in a neck brace. You're young enough, it'll heal, slightly out of line, but your neck will heal. So I kind of left it. But that was the biggest eye opener, because I think, I was very, very close to having a serious spinal injury, and also the fact that not getting X-rayed to start with and not knowing the severity of my injury, and kind of taking it for granted that I was okay and trying to race, that's why now I think, for young lads, if you get hurt, you need to get it checked out properly. Don't think, I'll be okay, because, it doesn't take a lot. I could just jump up and down and just, you could just snap or damage your spinal cord. You've got to be really, really sensible. I think that's kind of like hampered me quite a lot, because in my head, knowing I've already broken my neck, my spine is now slightly out of line. It's not dead straight. It's a bit of a weak point. That played a little bit of mind games with me a little bit. So the injury, although it's okay now, it aches now and again when it's cold. My neck aches a little bit. It's a little bit stiff, but so those 3 injuries, I think after that, my injuries, I never really had any big ones after that. Those 3 injuries kept recurring, although my neck didn't, my knee did, and my wrist did. So I had my wrist and my left knee were recurring injuries that carried on through my whole career, and kind of gradually got worse and worse. And now my knee and my wrist, when I went to specialists, they said, well, you want us to fix it, but it's like saying, here's a roadmap. You want to get to London, but don't tell us where you're starting from. He said, he said they're that knackered. He said, we don't know where to start to fix it. So I've had to live with my wrist and my knee and put up with a bit of instability and a bit of pain. At least I know what it's like. I don't want them to go in and fix it in case they start opening up a can of worms and make it worse. So yeah, they play quite a big role in slowing me down and sort of hampering my improvement, because at some point I had to slow down, and then I was trying to improve my technique and make myself smoother to try and get a bit of the speed back, but you can't get that raw speed back. You can smooth yourself out and not make the mistakes, but your raw speed's kind of gone because you're riding slower to compensate for your injury. So difficult.
Do you ever think about that now, Rob? The fact that if you think about it now, what you managed to achieve really with pretty much riding most of your career injured.
Yeah. I think I crashed so much when I was young because I was so wild, and later on I smoothed out, and that's why I was so keen on the technique side of it, because I had to look into the technique side so much to figure out a way of trying to smooth myself out, to keep myself out of trouble, to be more picky with my lines, to just to try and make my career as long as I could, but eventually, my wrist just broke it badly again, and that was it. Couldn't really ride anymore. So yeah.
We sort of mentioned that, and then my next question, it was what was it like leading the Motocross the Nations? I think that was '98 at Fox Hill in the really bad conditions, wasn't it? Really wet.
That's right.
And so that, and I remember it's sort of like you disappeared off the thing, and I was like, what happened there? Because you was in front all excited and then it was something to do with your knee then when it was locked.
Yeah, my cartilage, left knee again. Just it can be, sometimes it could just be you just have your foot on the floor, you just catch your foot and it just twists like that, and the cartilage in my knee just locks my knee up, and then I had to stop. And you kind of, if I can reverse the sort of action that happened, I can normally just flick it back out. But sometimes when you've got knee braces on and your knee brace is quite tight,
almost keeps it wrong place.
It stops you from moving your knee back to get it back out again, because it's holding it too tight. So stop and sort my knee out and then carry on. But
so frustrating. So frustrating.
Yeah, I mean that was great though, in the mud and all the British crowd and stuff. I still remember it. I still remember all the air horns going.
Mad.
It's great. Horrible conditions.
Yeah, it was really bad, but it was a great day, great memories.
Yeah.
Another one was about a Motocross the Nations. Someone did ask me this, I remember, but I didn't find the name in the end. But you had a big moment when you were leading the MX the Nations '94 race. What actually happened with that?
It was just down one of the fast downhills in Switzerland. I think I must have hit a bump or something, and I got a big old sort of tank slapper on at the front end, and the front end dug in, and my foot came off, and like it looked like my foot almost went under the wheel, but it didn't. I mean, could have been quite nasty, but I just obviously I tweaked my ankle a little bit, but it wasn't enough to slow me down. I still carried on. But yeah, I was very, very lucky. I mean, it was high speed. It was I was probably just getting to the point flat out in fourth gear, just where I was backing off to brake going down these hills. I'm like, I just hit a bump, and it just spat the back end of the bike a little bit, and my foot came off, and I had a bit of a off the track excursion at the next corner, back on again. Didn't slow me down much though, but yeah.
I'm pretty sure they caught it on the camera as well, the Motorvision guys.
They did. I've seen that plenty of times. Plenty of times. Yeah.
Because they're bringing out all the old ones now as well on YouTube, which is really cool. They're reloading loads of them.
I've been watching them. Yeah, they were great in the day. Motorvision, they were great.
It's like being a kid again and going to sleep again to YouTube videos of all those old days. It's great.
I watched that kind of stuff.
Oh, there was another incident as well that I was going to mention about. It was when Greg Albertine, wasn't it? Didn't he hit a deer or something?
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's like, I was behind him. I actually caught him up in that race about 5-6 laps in, and I was quite close on him. And all I remember seeing is I just saw something out the corner of my eye run from the right hand side into the track from the spectator area. So I don't know where it came from, because it was full of spectators, and it just ran out onto the track. And next thing I just saw the Suzuki cart wheeling down the track, and I mean, it killed the deer. I mean, fortunately Greg was okay, but I mean, the poor old deer, was dead. So freak accident. I mean, how many times are you ever gonna hit a deer that runs out on you? Of all the times to do it as well, when you're leading.
Biggest meeting in the world.
Poor, I felt I was gutted for Greg, because I mean, great rider. He was very lucky.
Before we go, I did say to Martin Petts as well. Obviously, that did the photography. He wanted me to say hello to you as well, so I'm saying hi from him.
Hi, Martin. Yeah, always great photography. I got loads of his pictures still from the day. He gave me some nice stuff when I was racing. I got a nice montage of all different riders that I have up my wall. So, yeah.
I'll say thanks to him as well, because he lets me use all his photos for some of you guys as well. So it's absolutely brilliant. Any shout outs or anything you want to make before we finish up?
Just good to, anybody who knows me, anybody I haven't seen for a long time, I hope they're well. I hope they're keeping out of trouble and keeping themselves safe in this bit of a weird situation that we're in. But and all the guys that don't know me, just get out and enjoy yourself on your dirt bikes and your motocross bikes, and come back in one piece. And I'm glad I've been some kind of entertainment to some of you who've watched this, and and I'm looking forward to listening to some of the other interviews you've done with some of the other riders too. So But thanks so much for it all. It's been really good.
No problem. Personally, myself, you were always one of my favourites, Rob. So this has been amazing for me personally. And
thanks so much.
You were a top class rider, and great to watch, and really exciting to watch as well. So I appreciate your time.
That's all right. Pleasure.
And hopefully we can keep in contact, and hope you take it easy and be safe.
Absolutely. I'll try and keep myself out of the way.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, the practice day. Count me in.
Yes, that would be amazing. That would make my life. That would.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Drag an old bike out for that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to hold you to that one.
That's cool.
Thanks, Rob. Much appreciated for your time.
All right. Okay, Lee. Pleasure.
Thanks ever so much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Take it easy. Bye.